Hi, everyone. Hello. Thank you so much for joining us um, at today's webinar. And we carry out a monthly webinar on different cybersecurity subjects. And how today's subject come up is that, December, January, well, over a dozen clients and business asked me, it's end of the last year and beginning of this year, since you guys, your team being in the trenches, seeing all the attacks left and right, what gonna be seeing in 2023? What do you expect that in 2023, any new attacks that's happening? Do I have the necessary controls in place that help me to protect my organization? And therefore, we have today's webinar and hopefully to address more audience. Very quick introduction to myself. So being in the trenches with the guys and, defending our customers against cyber attacks day by day for over a dozen years. So every day we've seen DDoS attacks, malware, ransomware, intrusions, etc. And we have seen well over 30 materialized ransomware attacks. And we saw how ransomware started it and all the way to evolve to today's. And I'm glad to say that we were able to defend our managed customer that without paying a penny to the criminals that were able to restore all their data after some of those very devastated ransomware attacks. We had cases where, not only files being encrypted by ransomware, but also, backups, their antivirus are crippled, their disaster recovery side being crippled. And so we were able to save the business as well as bring the customer's operation back afterwards. So quickly, today's agenda, we're going to talk about what happened last year, some of the major attack cases, and what's on the rise this year. Why we want to know some of those major attacks, because one side of threat analysis is to think as an attacker. So we're going to go through some of the cases that major cases in 2022, and then what is the most effective way to protect your organization against the upcoming attacks and the threats? And do you have a set of control in place? If you don't, how do you start? So last year, this group, and I mentioned this group last year's webinar, called the Lapsus group, they really made their name out there. They stood out. They were able to compromise those companies. You see the logo there. Not only those, many more, but those are some of the biggest names. They were able to compromise the companies in 2022 alone. And you can see some of the companies are not just big companies; they're tech giants. And you also identify some of those are telecommunication providers. Those companies pour in hundreds of millions of dollars every year into cybersecurity. Those tech giants, and somehow they still get breached. So what happened? Take Uber as example, right? Uber, the first major attack that Uber had was back in 2016. That was a really bad attack, and Uber tried to pay the attacker $100,000 to cover it up. Obviously, the criminal took the money and went to the press, and there's a huge data breach, and then also lead to a very, very bad reputation. And so in the end, Uber tried to pay $100,000 to cover up the previous attack in 2016. And in the end, they're paying $148 million because they lost the lawsuit. So after that, they got a new CISO in place, Chief Information Security Officer. They improved quite a bit of their internal controls. So wish that can never happen again. But in this case, Lapsus Group breached them September 2022. So an 18 years old attacker worked for Lapsus. He faked himself as the tech support and joined their Uber's internal Slack chat. And he contacted this user of the company. And obviously, this attacker did his research and reconnaissance to understand, this person was likely to have privileged access. So he gained trust of the user. He has a man-in-the-middle. He has certain devices that to fake the man-in-the-middle attacks that can bypass their 2FA, got into the system with this employee's credentials. And then this attacker discovered a lot more valuable and privileged account credentials. Usually those information should be guarded with extra layer of protection. But in this case, he was able to access to them. And as a result, well, you see over 77,000 of internal employees' private information are leaked, are breached. And with a number of customers' private information, including the driver's license, home address, and etc. And this is what you will see. And this is already out. And this is not even on the dark web. This is out on social media where the attackers are recruiting. So in this case, it's Lapsus that they don't recruit hackers. They don't recruit hackers this way. They recruit potentially your employees. And they don't ask for data. They just ask for login information, your VPN logins, your remote desktop, remote connection credentials, and then discuss money after. And again, Lapsus is the attacker group that stood way out. At the same time, many smaller attacker groups that just like Lapsus are doing the same thing. I haven't seen a few of those on social media that recruiting company employees several times, and just from all over the place. So social engineering is one side. The other thing is we saw a dramatically increased number of 0 days vulnerabilities. So what is 0 day? 0 day means the weaknesses or vulnerabilities that resides in any those tools, software or the operating systems, that the vendor has not developed a security patch, or the vendor is unaware of such weakness. That is, all the attackers are leverage that and exploits left and right. So when your trusted technology vendors are compromised, so did the software, right? So do the applications. So in this case, Lapsus through social engineering, they got to NVIDIA, and we know NVIDIA is one of the huge tech giant that manufacture CPU and GPUs. So in this case, Lapsus was able to get NVIDIA's future plans, roadmaps, architecture, source code of the designs for the next years. So all of a sudden, NVIDIA lost all those competitive edge. And so after that, we were being very cautious, and we warned our customer that, some customers that use NVIDIA heavily, their graphic cards for graphic design, stuff like that. So, being very cautious that you may want to guard the data and the machine carefully. Don't install any NVIDIA's drivers just like that, because with a compromised digital certificate, that the drivers, legitimately drivers from NVIDIA, could be embedded with malware because they got breached by this attacker group. And so did Felina. That was March, and the team spent long hours and weeks and patch customers Microsoft Office. Everybody's using Microsoft Office, and this 0-day allowed the attacker to conduct remote code execution, which means, well, drop ransomware, execute ransomware from remote. So we've been seeing a lot more 0 days, and there will be more this year. So what do they have in common? The 0 days vulnerability of your trusted technology vendors, as well as social engineering to your trusted employees. They become the insider threats, malicious insiders that you hear often. Malicious insider doesn't mean that your internal employee has a bad intent. No, it's when they got compromised. Number one is the trust is established already internally, where you pick Microsoft, you pick those big giants, technology vendors, because big market share, leading technology, a lot of people in the industry using it, you trust them, right? There's a lot of certification behind it, experts to provide you with a tool that you run for your operation. As well as, when you hire someone, you go through the secure hiring process, you check the reference, you even check their social medias, etc. Right? There's no criminal records, and this is great, brilliant employees, that trustworthy employees. That's all good, and this is all happening everywhere, right? But then you think back, many companies still don't have a good mechanism to revalidate the trust. And the next is internal resources. Usually the company internal resources, the files and etc. Classified information can be freely accessed by internal staff. I've seen companies that don't even guard their HR information and finance information. If someone knows the directory of how to get to the folder, they can, right? So the problem is when there's a malicious insider, the insider can access everything. Also, starting from the pandemic, the traditional perimeter that the IT or your security setup has been blurred. Before, everybody working in the office, the internet comes in, you drop a firewall, that defined the company, logical perimeter, right? And people use VPN, stuff like that. And after the pandemic, people start working from home, everything's in a rush. People still use their, the personal device, because the company doesn't have one. They use their personal mobile devices that the company doesn't have a say or control to. Even with the company devices, we've seen that, people use company device for remote learning, and the kids can do whatever on the computer. So with that, not only, the devices are out of the control, the company doesn't have a say to it, and you don't have any patching mechanism or plan or strategy for those, and hence, very vulnerable to the 0 days, as well as, there's many more untrusted places that people are working from. Some homes, people work from home, and public areas, right? Airport, Starbucks, and then we'll talk about that later on. So because of this, that lead to when there's a materialized attack through insider threats, it leads to the greatest damage. And here are some quick stats. So last year, from the insider threat incident, it's almost 50% increase, and this number going to go up this year. And the loss due to credential theft is close to 1 million. And that happened also fairly often because it's a human nature for convenience that everyone use the same password for whatever, for their personal life, right? They may want to get a free coffee from a street vendor that, okay, so you create a membership account with us, and then so that we can send you promotional materials, right? And obviously those small vendors, how they guard your information are different, right? So if attacker obtain the password, they just try the same password with your business account, and that often got them in, right? And the average time to contain an insider threat is almost 3 months because still companies don't have a sufficient detection procedure or mechanism, right? So I went to RSA last year, and the FBI had a booth, and the FBI says, you'd be surprised that we come to the businesses, tell them they're being breached. They didn't even know. It's when FBI saw, the company's information and data is on the auction house, on the dark web, and the FBI knocked the door that, what, actually you got breached this a long time ago. And over 1/3 of organizations globally affected every year by insider threat. That's a big number. So how to combat with this threat? When we talk about cybersecurity, right, the first thing hit your mind is technology, technical stuff. I'm okay. I have a firewall in place. I have a perimeter firewall in place. Everyone has, antivirus, right? I'm good. But not if the attack originated from internal. Attack originated from internal, your gateway or perimeter firewall is useless, and the internal account is a legit account with legitimate access to different company resources. So your antivirus wouldn't do anything about it. It's all legitimate. Now the attackers are all in for data, right? A lot of cases they don't want to drop a ransomware. Maybe in the end, after they get your data already. So to combat with this, focus on your people and your business processes through a layered defense. I'm sure that all of us are exercise layered defense for our home, right? To defend our home, we not only have a door, we have a lock on the door, right? We have cameras. We may have a guard dog, 24/7 monitoring, all that. So if you exercise layered defense for your home, use the same approach for your information assets. Because people are always your weakest link. It's always the someone click that link, someone answer a phishing call. And 2/3 of the insider threat attacks are due to negligence because either the company doesn't have a policy or SOP in place, or the employee fail, or the company, the management fail to educate them and make sure that they understand what are the best practices and what are the company senior management's mandates to do certain things. That's why it is important, so important, to develop administrative controls, have a set of clear organization policies around information. What is your standard operation procedures? What's your baselines? What are your guidelines? And etc. Now, all the companies do have a set of those controls, but the challenge is this: how do you know your employees and your users really understand and remember what's in the mandates, right? So we see this a lot. If you cannot measure it, you cannot manage it. So the answer to that is to build a compliance program to guard your information, right? You need to have a targeted, tailored, recurring awareness training program that can produce measurable results, can give you the feedback. And from the feedback, understand what are the weaknesses of the organization and for certain departments, and come up with improvements, further training, and so that you can use your resource, your limited resource wisely. And we hear this a lot where, company says, hey, I do have awareness training. I have this phishing simulation I subscribed. Phishing simulation is good. It's great. A lot of vendors that carry that. Phishing simulation is basically you subscribe the service, the vendor will produce fake phishing emails and see who clicked the wrong link. But email is one of the many exposures all companies have. And it's just a small subsection of the attack surface. Mentioned earlier that we've seen phishing, which is phishing through voice, right? Especially through pandemic, people don't know their peers that well or their bosses that well, that they got phone calls that fake to be their customer, their peers, or their bosses that demand certain things. The rogue USB is still happening, right? The attacker dropped a malware, a ransomware in a USB, purposely left it somewhere, in a public area in the office, right? A cafeteria, etc. And people plug in, and they always label something that is so tempting for you to plug in. Last night's party photos, things like that. Evil twin. So we talk about Wi-Fi's, not just corporate Wi-Fi's, and public Wi-Fi's. You can get this module for under $100, a Wi-Fi module, produce overpowered Wi-Fi signal that covers the legitimate Wi-Fi. So the user connect to the attacker's Wi-Fi network, and this is where they steal the credentials, right? And the email phishing will not train you and your user of your incident response plan and disaster recovery plan, right? That's another critical area. If you do not have an incident response plan and disaster recovery plan, please do have one. If you do have those, but they're not tested, please do test them and document them. Because if you don't do it, if you don't test them, they're likely won't work when those dire situation happens. So what makes an effective awareness training program, effective, right? Follow the SMART model. And again, where management, we see this a lot. Yes, they also apply to awareness training program, your compliance program. So here comes Interware's training services. We provide that. We do follow the SMART model and based on the NIST standard. So NIST is the National Institute of Standard Technologies that developed by the US federal government and used by many governments and enterprise. So we follow that standard to develop services and program for our clients, as well as this is part of a compliance. So it's delivered by our GRC, governance risk compliance experts. And the training is powered by our internally developed AI-based training tool. So what does it do is they will tell you what are the weaknesses that each individual company has, because each company is unique, as well as you can drill down to departments, right? There's certain key departments that you want them to be better than the others, even down to individuals. We know the strength and weaknesses, and you improve upon that. Once we know the weaknesses, we have a tailored awareness webinar that cover the weakness, your people vulnerabilities. And we have certified experts that carry out tabletop exercises for instant response and disaster recovery. For example, we have a customer that come to us say, okay, surprise me. Let's book the session. Surprise me with a disaster. So we come in. Number one, we understand, okay, what's your disaster recovery plan? Now, this disaster happened. Go. The floor is yours. So then they're going to follow the plan. Let's say someone in the company designated to declare disaster. And once it declares, some other departments start to follow. This needs to restore, that needs to restore, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And we document this process and calculate what's the estimate time that's taken to bring your critical system back so that you can be operational, within your maximum tolerable downtime, right? So this is what we do. And other cybersecurity services that we provide, a lot of engagements start with a cyber threat assessment, because you want to improve your overall information security gesture. Okay, so but you need to understand your current state. So the cyber threat assessment give you the understanding of your current state, your future state, and we can develop a strategy and plan to get there, right? And very often when my team conduct the cyber threat assessment, we discover attack surfaces and exposures that overlooked. And we have covered risk compliance services, also provide the awareness training. And we have a 24/7, 365 days SOC, Security Operations Center, provide extended incident detection response. We have certified white hats, the good hackers, that does penetration test. And we have a tier 3 SOC 2 type 2 and PCI certified data center, act as a disaster recovery for the clients. And we have for the technical side, we have a fleet of certified experts, subject matter experts, helping the customer, let's say developing your security baseline for your endpoint, your mobile devices, your servers, hardening your firewalls, your SASE, your EDRs, and etc. So time is good. Now, this is pretty much the last slide. So the key takeaway today to come back with insider threat, you're going to see more of those in this year, is make sure you develop a tailored to your business, tailored to different business functions, and a comprehensive and most importantly, measurable awareness training program. And if you need help, we're always here. Okay, now to the questions.
Yeah, we do have a few questions, Paul. Are you good to take them?
Sure.
Okay. So someone asked, we coordinate and outsource our business functions with a lot of third parties. How do we control the risks associated with third parties?
Oh, that's a great question. Because when we talk about the third party supply chain attacks, when that happened, this is one of the major one happened 2-3 years ago about SolarWind, very reputable company, and they got breached. So all their customers get breached. So that lead to the entire governance risk discussion. So my recommendation is you need to have a discussion within the senior management leadership team and develop certain policies that when you sign up with a third party, number of steps that you have to go through so that you as a senior leadership exercise your due care and due diligence, that you try your best to vet that that third party, right? For instance, let's say for a data center service, right? You want to make sure that, are you certified? Are you certified with, certain industry standards, right? Ask for those reports, right? Like in this case, you can, like, for example, ask the customer asks for, okay, so show me the SOC 3 report. There you go. Show me the PCI results, certification result, and here it is. And part of that, if it's possible, also do a site visits, right? If it's possible, right? Then when you go to the site, when you see the people, see the places, a lot of concerns can be answered, or you may discover a lot of issues. So those need to be executed, followed, and documented internally. So as another quick answer is the Microsoft, right? Microsoft, if you engage with Office 365, for example, they have certifications of so much HIPAA compliance, FIPA compliance, whatever compliance, even ISOs, you can download it from Microsoft. So you look at it, okay, so this vendor going through those exercises that to back their service, so that we exercise our care to review and we accept that we can use them as a vendor, and make sure you documented this step.
All right, thanks for that, Paul. You have another question from Pete. Do you have a recommended architecture and implementation for MFA AD or AAD access?
Multi-factor, right? So again, any of this technical controls put in place need to have a discussion, understanding not just the people in the process, right? And then, because that's going to introduce some frictions, right? We're talking about IT, which is all about performance, all about, user should access data and information whenever they want. And then you come with the information security, it's all about controls, right? So you got to balance that instead of just one golden architecture that or plan to execute a multi-factor authentication. Most importantly, how to start with that is come from the business side, right? Of course, we understand stolen credentials, impersonations. That's why we need multi-factor authentication. But at the same time, that go to the details that what the technology can offer and what the impact would act on users, right? So we had a case many years ago, and with a customer reach out to us, say they got breached by two-factor authentication. And then we got our team goes in and then do our investigation. So what happened is Office 365. So what happened is the attacker got a stolen credential and the credential worked. So when the attacker tried to log in to Office 365 and the two-factor authentication is enabled, Office will send the either the text message, right, or it can be a phone call, right? In this case, the company decided to use a phone call. So whenever you log in, and Microsoft will call you and tell you a code, and you punch in the code. So in this case, it almost became a DDoS attack that the attacker keep entering the same credential, and this director got bombarded by phone calls. And at that time, it wasn't even tell the code; you just say approve, and he approved it, right? So it is an overall business process challenge that we try to solve. So and again, you want to exercise your due care and due diligence. So you should even not to use some of those architecture that recommended by someone else. It's the exercise that going through those processes that come up with what is suitable to you, right? And also very important is understand your exposures, your attack surfaces. That's very important, because okay, I can have Office 365 that I can apply 2FA, right? I can apply, some of the 2FA tokens for my VPN access, but anything else, right? To your EMR, yes, there are two-factor authentication. What else, right? So going through a security and threat assessment will help you to get the insights of what you may overlook or missed.
Thanks for that, Paul. In the interest of time, we have just one more question. So from Bethany, hi there, do I need a cyber liability insurance for my company?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Now it's almost like a norm. And again, back to the legal side where, we call it the prudent person rule, right? If everybody else are having cyber insurance, but you don't, right? You better have a really good reason why not. On top of that is when you go through your risk assessment, when you transfer some of the risks, the cyber insurance is a good solution. However, even if you do have cyber insurance, please do understand and do review what are the terms, because a lot of cyber insurance now, they try to get clients, right? But at the same time, they also understand that cyber attacks are left and right. Eventually will happen. So they may tweak their term and conditions that, when it happen, it may not part of the coverage. So it is important that if you engage a cyber insurance where you have existing cyber insurance, make sure you understand what are in the terms.
Thank you, Paul. So before you wrap up, I wanted to let you know that Interware is giving a limited time offer only for all our attendees today. You can now sign up for a 30-minute assessment consultation with Interware by March 10th at no cost. This is one of our chargeable service items, but only for everyone who joined us today. You may simply sign up and save your spot for a 30-minute assessment consultation using the link I've mentioned in the chat. Again, this is a limited time offer and you may only sign up by Friday, March 10th. And that's a wrap. Thank you everyone for joining us, and we hope you found this session helpful and meaningful that you can put to work today. If you have other questions, please feel free to reach us, and we value your feedback and would love to hear from you. Thank you again, and we look forward to seeing you at our next webinar.
Thank you. Take care, everyone.